So welcome to I Am Genesis Podcast. I am your host, Cheryl. If you are listening to us on streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, make sure you share. And if you are tuning in by way of YouTube, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and share this podcast episode as well. This episode is all about keep going anyway. Not too long ago, I was stopped and asked, what does that mean? You always say keep going anyway, keep going anyway. What does that mean? Where did you get that from? What keeps you going anyway? What keeps you encouraged? What makes you not want to quit? So it's a story in the Bible of Peter walking on water. Some of you all may be familiar with that story, but long story short, Jesus came walking on water to meet them, and the disciples thought it was a ghost. Peter said, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come. And Jesus said, come. Peter got out of the boat and he began to walk on water towards Jesus. Peter got distracted by everything that was going on around him, so much so that he began to sink because he took his eyes off of Jesus. He took his eyes off of his assignment. He lost focus and began to direct his attention more on not what he was doing, but more on what was going on around him, more so those distractions. And as a result, Peter began to sink. And so he called out, Lord, save me. And immediately it says that Jesus stretched out his hand to save Peter. So it got me to thinking like, wait a minute. Peter stepped out of the boat to do something he's never done before. And he allowed the distractions of what was going on around him to knock him off of his assignment and completing what he's never done before, which was walking on water and walking towards Jesus to meet Jesus where he is. And so it got me to thinking like, he did something that was never done before. However, he wasn't able to complete it because he got distracted. And the more that the enemy can distract you, it will push you further and further away from completion. Here's the kick to it. Peter got distracted in a familiar environment. Peter's a fisherman. He got distracted on his own turf. Peter is familiar with storms. Peter is familiar with water. Peter is familiar with boating. He's a fisherman. He was on his own turf and got distracted by something that he's experienced before, which is wind. He may not have experienced it at that speed, but he was familiar with what it was. And oftentimes when we are in pursuit of doing something that we've never done before on a different level, even in an environment that we are familiar with, even in an industry that we are familiar with, we too can still fall for distractions. So even though entrepreneurship is familiar, there are certain levels that will intensify. And the next part is Jesus reached out his hand to save Peter. Y'all, he was an arm's length away from completing his walk on water. When he began to drown, he yelled, Lord, save me. And Jesus reached out his hand. I want you to do that. I want you to take a moment and simply reach out your hand. Oftentimes when distractions come, we're literally an arm's length away from completing something we've never done before. And when you are an arm's length away from completing something you've never done before, the wind's gonna start kicking up. Every distraction gonna come from every single angle. But one thing that I refuse to do, I refuse to be an arm's length away and give up then. I refuse to be an arm's length away and get distracted on my turf. I refuse to be an arm's length away from completing something that I've never done before. And that's my challenge to you. In the moments of despair, in the moments of hardship and struggle and challenges, I challenge you to challenge yourself to simply keep going anyway. I challenge you to challenge yourself that in your lowest moment, if you can simply just reach out your hand and remind yourself, I'm an arm's length away. It may not feel like it, but I'm an arm's length away. And oftentimes, we may never know how close we are, but God does. We may never know that we're literally an arm's length away because the pressure gets so intense. But join me in telling yourself this. Keep going anyway. What would have happened if Peter kept going anyway?